So today we have actually two goals. We're going to be discussing complex solutions. Sometimes complex solutions are called imaginary numbers. Okay? And what that is the square root of a negative number. So the square root of a negative number should be written as this. If you have the square root of negative a, you're going to have to break it down, separate it into negative 1 times a. Okay? Over here it tells you that the square root of negative 1 is I. Okay? This is your complex or imaginary number. Okay? And therefore your final solution would be I times the square root of a. Okay? So let's go ahead and quickly do some examples. Okay? So let's simplify, and I'm apologizing for the glare, but let's go ahead and simplify the square root of negative 8. We can rewrite that by taking out the negative, so this is negative 1 times the square root of 8. Okay, when we multiply those, we get what we started out with. The square root of negative 1 is I. Okay, and we simplify the square root of 8 as 2 square root of 2, just as we've been doing. So our final answer should be written as 2I times the square root of 2. Okay, let's do our next example here, which is the square root of negative 36. So here again, square root of negative 1 times the square root of a positive 36. The square root of negative 1 is I, and the square root of 36 is 6. So therefore our final solution is 6I. And this is how we work complex solutions. Okay? So now, let's see how we can incorporate this into what we've already been doing, solving and factoring quadratics and looking at their x-intercepts. Okay? So next, we have two problems, and we're going to solve them not by factoring, but using another method that we worked previously in class. Okay, so we're going to have to solve for x to find our solutions. So we're going to subtract both sides from 100, or 100 from both sides. So now I have 4x squared is equal to negative 100. Okay, I divide both sides by 4. And x squared is equal to negative 25. Okay, to solve for x, as we've done in the past, you take the square root of both sides. The square root of x squared is x, and the square root of negative 25 is 5I. That's our final solution. These are our x-intercepts, our roots, our zeros, whichever one you want to call them. This is where they will cross the x-axis. Okay, let's go on to our next example. Subtract both sides by 2. 8x squared is equal to negative 2. Okay, divide both sides by 8. We have x squared is equal to negative 1/4 when we reduce that fraction. Okay, take the square root of both sides. The square root of x squared is x. And I'm going to break this down. Okay, this is the square root of negative 1. And I'm going to separate this. This is the square root of 1 divided by the square root of 4. Okay? Square root of negative 1 is I. The square root of 1 is 1, and the square root of 4 is 2. So our final answer is x equals 1/2